All right, everyone, welcome back to What Do You Know with Nick and Devin. I'm Nick.
I'm Devin.
And I'm Sofia.
Hey, welcome in, Sofia.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, today we have a special episode featuring our first guest here on What Do You Know with Nick and Devin. Welcome, Sofia. Applause.
Applause. Soph, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not that interested.
What is there to tell?
But I will say that I think in terms of my relationship with you guys, I'm just going to address the elephant in the room, which is that I've known Devin longer than you, Nick.
That's true.
That is true.
7th grade homeroom.
Yeah.
That's wild. 7th grade. I didn't realize it was 7th grade.
Yeah.
Yep.
Jesus.
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, and then I've gone to high school with both of you. Mm-hmm. Now I'm living in Chicago, living the dream. Yeah, I don't know. I have 2 cats.
Nice.
I don't know what else you want to know about me.
That's
obviously what are the cats' names? That's what everyone is asking. What the fuck are the cats' names?
Shaking their computer. Yeah.
I have Hamlet and I have Monet. And actually both cats, that was their original names from the shelter.
Oh, you didn't change the names up. I mean,
No.
they're pretty good names.
They were great names.
Yeah.
And I mean, Hamlet, just like a solid name. But then Monet, we were saying, because my boyfriend is an artist. Mm-hmm. And so when we were looking for a second cat, like, oh, we got to go with the artist. It's like perfect.
Right on brand.
Right on
Yeah.
brand.
Nice.
On brand with the house.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you for being with us today. You know, as you said, you've known us since
Forever.
What do you call it? And so when we thought about, who's going to be our first guest, who's going to kind of like switch things up, things like that, I think our inclination was kind of go with someone who, one, used to do theater with us. Remember
and
that
radio.
time in our lives? Yeah, exactly.
That is true, because I mean, theater is probably when the 3 of us especially became really close.
Yeah.
Because of Putnam County Spelling Bee.
Spelling Bee.
Oh boy.
And Susical.
Yeah.
I forget Susical.
We all do.
All that fun stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't want you to be nervous or like scared to get into the mic. It should be a fun, chill time.
Yeah. We'll make sure we hide all the comments from you.
I know, it's going to be a lot.
If you have any shitty thing to say about Sofia, just DM us personally.
Correct.
Don't put them publicly.
And we'll laugh react, don't worry.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know that most of the shitty things will probably come from your husband. So
Yeah, exactly.
he'll just text me separately.
Right. Cyberbully you on the
He'll
side.
cyberbully me directly.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's get into your topic, because I think that, I want to give you time to explore it, and this is, new for you, I feel like.
Yeah, so when I was thinking about a topic that I'd want to do, first of all, I was like, what is something I can talk about for a long time?
Yeah. You keep giving me a look, and I'm getting nervous. I'm the nervous one.
Because I know, I just think that if I was coming on this podcast, I need to do something that I'm going to give your viewers something a little different.
Okay.
So I'm going to talk about something that is very deep and personal to me, which is the Real Housewives franchise.
Oh, Jesus Christ. All right.
However, I am going to go a little bit farther back.
I like that this is deeply personal to you. The reality hit the Housewives franchise is deeply personal.
I have been a reality TV junkie since, oh my goodness, probably since I was 15. So that's like half my life. And I do think that's something that I think is a lot of fun to talk about. And I have become recently very passionate about it simply because I think that it gets a lot of flack. And I think that, there's a lot of things that, no offense, that men do that I think can be considered a little silly, but for some reason are
silly
not.
or awful.
Fine line.
Well,
Fine line.
What are we talking about here? Yeah. I think in terms of hobbies. So it's you have fantasy football kind of things have become really big. Video games are things that, and I'm not saying, women do that too.
Sure.
But I think that reality TV sometimes is kind of oh, this is just a silly thing. But it's actually become a really, really big, I think, franchise and part of pop culture in general. So that's why I kind of want to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah. Sure.
And I think especially for Bravo, personally, I think it's a very exciting time to be a Bravo fan right now. There's a lot going on, and it's gone even beyond the Real Housewives, or the reason I was thinking about it, is because right now we have a new era of the Real Housewives of New York. They scrapped the old Real Housewives of New York. They started a new one. They're calling it the Ronnie reboot. It is one of the most diverse casts that we've seen on Real Housewives. Yeah, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And I just think that it's kind of interesting because I think it's going to reset what we see. It's kind of reiterating and reinforcing the fact that like these kind of shows are not really going anywhere.
Yeah, fair.
So I did a little bit of research on just reality TV in general because I was kind of interested of what is it that makes these kind of shows so interesting.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about reality TV is that you can trace reality TV shows back to all the way to the 1940s.
Whoa.
What?
Which is,
What?
I know.
That's way further back than I thought it was going to be.
I know.
So you'd be like 1992.
No,
that makes sense.
1940s. So 1940, I want to say 1948. And so I think that you've heard of a little show called Candid Camera.
Yes.
Which apparently started back in the 40s. And
No
it was
shit.
Yeah.
Huh. What?
Isn't that crazy? Which I didn't really even know they had TV.
Well,
Not
my
like
thing,
that.
Yeah, well, my thing is like, how'd they hide the cameras? They were so huge.
Behind a faux
Right.
wall.
It's just this giant truck.
Right.
So it used to actually be a radio show that they would do kind of like these candid moments via the radio where they kind of smooth people. And Candid Camera to me is kind of like the original Punk'd.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because I mean you have and I think that it ended in 2014. So Candid Camera went on for years and years and years. And it was just something that people just really liked watching normal people on TV be put in these really weird situations.
Sure.
And I think back then it was, they kind of used like funny props. I think it turned into like weird situations, right? Like if someone's stealing from somebody, would you say something?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I think it's turned into those, but it used to kind of just be like, what do you do if like this trick drawer is not opening, or like something pops out, or like something is, it's making people kind of...
Right, you push a button and the microwave falls apart.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's what it used to be. And so then that's all the way back. Then you kind of see we haven't seen any new reality shows for a while. Then you kind of have the writer's strike back in the 80s. Yes, writer's strike's been going on for this long.
Years and years and years.
Just pay writers.
Please.
It's not that hard. Especially since I have a lot of TV that I really need some new seasons.
In a selfish manner.
In a selfish manner, to quote, my boyfriend and I just finished watching the show Severed, and Jaime said, he's like, I'm about to start a GoFundMe. So I can see season 2.
Fair.
But yeah, so 1980s, we had a little show called Cops. Don't know if you heard of it.
Oh. I didn't even think of that as it is reality television.
Definitely.
I just didn't put it in the same box.
Yeah.
But then I think the 1990s was really when reality TV kicked off.
Uh-huh.
We had a show. Well, first of all, MTV was introduced to the world, which I think was introduced in the 80s. But the 90s is really when they started delving into not just music videos, but more television shows.
Right.
Yeah.
And they started with The Real World.
I think I watched one season of one, but I don't know. It's to reality TV in that way where it's like Big Brother or The Real World, where everyone's just confined to a house. I'm just like, okay, well, yeah, everyone's going to go fucking crazy, sitting in a house all day with all these strangers. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Well, what I think what was interesting is being confined to the house, it allowed them to have all of this footage that they could easily parse down into a storyline.
Oh, yeah.
And it saves you kind of a lot of money because you have these people together for whatever it is, a week or 2 or 3. Mm-hmm. You have all of this TV footage that you're then able to kind of condense into this larger story.
Totally.
Yeah. So Real World was really good. And then what I also think is very interesting is that in the 90s, we had the O.J. Simpson trial, which I think was kind of this revolutionary time, or not revolutionary, but this time where you really saw that there was interest in scandal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a huge pop culture time for that. It was crazy. Everyone was
Huge.
talking about it.
Huge.
Yeah.
I mean, the car chase.
Right, that too. Everyone was glued to their TV.
Yeah.
Well, I think scandal, intrigue through this new medium
Yes.
of like a 24-hour news cycle of all those things, because I think scandal in like the papers and scandal over radio, sure, like reporting on that,
Yeah,
but
with Nixon
now
and Watergate.
right, but now you have a 24-hour news cycle that can just like kind of elevate this or really like exploit it in a theatrical way for what it is, even though it's, you know, someone was murdered and we need to see what happened.
It wasn't that fun.
Right. Correct.
But if you think about it, I mean, like a show like Cops is so popular, and now you get this real life trial. This is a character that we know O.J. Simpson. Everybody knew O.J. Simpson as this like famous football player.
Yeah.
He did something that it's just insane. Then it was this whole like, well, who do we think? Like, are you on OJ's side? Are you against OJ's side? They brought it into this, and it's like now a trial that we were able to watch on TV.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. Yeah, so you have these like, in the 90s, it's Real World, OJ Simpson. Then 2000s, I think an area where we all probably really remember starting to watch TV that wasn't just cartoons.
I'm still watching cartoons. Excuse you.
I mean, I said not just cartoons. I didn't say.
I'm only watching cartoons. Excuse you.
But that's when you start having the reality show competitions.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Survivor, Amazing Race, American Idol, which I think for me, American Idol was kind of my first deep dive into reality television.
Your gateway drug.
My gateway.
It's interesting because I've heard that American Idol, especially starting right after 9/11, was kind of like the first, like, it was kind of the notion of trying to bring the nation together and like all focus in on one thing. I think when you try to do that with a television show, you have like these genres that kind of people aren't interested in and things like that. But you have this reality show of like, you know, so-and-so from the middle of Arkansas is now on this huge national platform and stage. And, you know, how do we make this kind of all-American thing? And it's interesting to see like part of reality TV trying to place itself in a way that can really influence the morale or like of an entire country, especially one so expansive as ours. So to see American Idol in that way, when it's not just like, I mean, I think now it's just a
now
fun,
it's a circus.
and like competition show, but in the beginning, like there was so much more intention behind it.
Totally. Well, and I also think, there's a couple of things. One, you have people voting, and I think probably more people voted in American Idol than they probably do for the presidential election.
100%.
Probably.
I mean, I remember and also it was kind of exciting for me because as a kid, I could finally vote for something, you know?
Did you vote on American Idol?
Oh, yeah.
Did you?
Oh, no.
Oh,
I didn't watch
either.
it. I'm watching cartoons.
Let me reiterate.
You would, you would call in. Because now you can text. It's so late.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
Oh,
you
yeah.
have to
So what do you
call.
do?
You had to stand by the phone. If the line was busy, keep dialing.
Oh, you had to wait for someone to answer the phone?
We had to wait for the call to go through. And this is like, I mean, back then it was like 20 years ago. Back in my day. But it just wasn't as easy to get. I mean, now they do the texting voting.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you can do online. I think people
There's
can
probably
tweet
an app.
in.
Well,
There's an app.
your rotary phone, you just got to keep on going around. It was so hard to dial
Fingers
back.
get tired. Use a pencil instead.
Couldn't even hit redial.
But it was it was really exciting. And I literally remember I would watch American Idol. Because also, you had to watch live.
Right.
Because you had to vote then.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And so I remember when my dad would go on business trips, I would watch and I would like leave him notes of like, this is who we're voting for. This is who we like. And so that the next day when we watched the results, he knew.
The phones are now open.
Phones are now open.
Jeez.
So who was the first person you voted for?
So I did not watch the Kelly Clarkson season to vote, but I did the second season, the Clay Aiken-Rubin Stuttered.
Oh, yeah.
That was
I
big.
remember that drama.
That was big.
That was a big drama.
Well, so then the next year after we had these shows, Big Brother, Survivor, Amazing Race, Idol, cable TV started getting a lot bigger. So all of these Survivor, Idol, I mean, these were like Fox, CBS, ABC.
Yeah, your basic
yeah.
network.
Your basic anybody. But then now cable's starting to get a little bit bigger. So we got cable. And the Bravos, the A&Es, the TLCs. I mean, this is this is my sweet spot. This is really where I started to shine. And so you had Laguna Beach, Project Runway, America's Next Top Model. And then where I'm going to start was Real Housewives of Orange County.
Oh.
But what I want to say first is that what I think is really interesting is that people, and by people I mean execs, thought
They're not really people.
the execs didn't think that these type of shows would make it because you were used to shows like Friends, Will and Grace, where you could sell box sets.
Yeah.
You know, like DVDs. Remember those?
Yeah.
Thanks.
But yeah, so you used to buy the box, which I had all the box sets for Friends. But I also remember people were buying box sets for these reality TV shows. They wanted the box sets for...
That's wild.
I know, right?
To go back and watch reality TV.
I mean, but think about it. Like, so Laguna Beach, a great example. I mean, that was more of a scripted reality show.
Yeah, okay.
And so it really did have like a good story. I mean, I still will go back and watch some of these old shows, even the old America's Next Top Model. I mean, because it was just like really interesting. And then you're introducing these like TV villain type of people. You know, it's like, it's this very, like, you have characters that you kind of become invested in the same way that you have become invested in a show like Friends.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
And I think that is what people weren't really expecting. You have Laguna Beach, I think, as a great example because these are recurring characters, right?
Sure.
So you have people that, like Elsie didn't go to Paris, which is a huge pop culture moment.
I'll take your word for it.
But, I mean, that is like these kind of... You're watching Elsie's story. You're watching Spencer, who became this big TV villain. You're watching his story. I mean, look at we'll like jump to other, like the Kardashians have been on now they started a second series for Hulu because people were so invested in their lives, they missed them being on reality TV. So this is a great segue.
Oh, love it.
We love a connect the dots because I think that the reason that some of these, like, especially Real Housewives, became really big because people are interested in human stories. So you have the housewives, which are these group of women for whatever city, and you're invested in, like the silly, there's a good amount of things, right? You have the silly stuff that makes you laugh. You have the fighting, but then you're also really invested in these people's lives. I mean, we've seen divorces. We've seen, stories where people have gotten sick. We've seen mental illness. I mean, you're watching a lot of family drama. It's this like intrigue of what's happening with people behind, especially these like lavish lifestyles. And to know that even behind all of this money and intrigue, they're still kind of going through some of the same human stories that everybody else is going through.
Yeah, not every rich person is a lizard person. They're also human.
They're also human. Who knew? No.
I don't know.
Still out jury for you.
So what's really interesting about the Housewives, so Bravo, which is the show or the channel that it's on, Bravo originally in the 80s shared the channel space with the Playboy TV channel.
Okay.
So it was a weird mix of like softcore porn. And then also Bravo did these like, scripted or they I guess recorded plays or like scripted miniseries. And a lot of controversial, I guess, from my understanding, a lot of controversial type of shows. It was a very like artsy program, which is weird considering that it was like this juxtaposition of softcore porn, but then also like
like didn't they do like opera as well?
Yeah. So it was like they wanted to be an arts.
Oh, that makes sense.
Bravo. Yeah.
Wow.
Bravo. Yeah, you get it.
Made that
Bravo.
connection.
But then NBC bought Bravo in 2002, which NBC still owns Bravo. It's still part of the Bravo family. They had first Queer Eye for the Straight Guy,
Right.
Oh yeah.
which is really, I think, what put Bravo on the map. And then you have a man named Andy Cohen, who is the not just Anderson Cooper's best friend and co-host for New Year's, but is also the creator of the Real Housewives. Andy Cohen started Real Housewives.
I didn't know he made it.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
And he's super, even to this day, he is very invested in the Housewives. He's taken a little bit more of a step back. He used to watch every single cut. Now he'll just kind of trust the editors and watch the final cut before it goes out.
Right.
But he still approves every episode before it's released.
Oh wow.
He approves every housewife that's on the show. This is his baby, and it's made him. His net worth is not bad.
Yeah. So he thought of it, pitched it, produced it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the reason that he came up with the idea is because you have the show Desperate Housewives, which was a scripted show on ABC.
Yeah.
That
Did you ever watch that?
No.
Eva
obviously
Longoria.
But I'm making more connections now. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Desperate Housewives, for those that never watched it, Desperate Housewives was basically about 4 women that lived in this cul-de-sac neighborhood, fancy neighborhood, and it was just their ongoings of their life. You had Eva Longoria, who's screwing the gardener behind her husband's back because her husband Carlos was kind of an asshole.
Yeah.
And you have Bree, who is supposed to have this picture perfect life, and she's the typical housewife when you think of a housewife. But then she and her husband are having marital strifes, and she's trying to hide it from everybody else. You have Terry Hatcher's character, who just went through a really bad divorce. She's now this single mom raising her kid in this community.
Yep.
And then you had, who's the last? Oh, Lynette.
Felicity Huffman.
Who went to jail.
But she was, I feel like Felicity Huffman was, so you had like the sexy housewife in Eva Longoria. You had the very stereotypical Stepford mom in Bree. You had Terry Hatcher being like the new single, like, navigating the world as an adult after a divorce. Right. And then you had the typical mom, like stressed in Felicity Huffman of like, I have kids, I have to run around, and I have a minivan and soccer and all of that.
She like had to give up her career in law to like be a stay-at-home mom, and like I think then she goes back to work. Then
all the sides of
Yes, that became really, really popular. And then there was, I think what was really interesting though, is then there's like all this crazy stuff that happens. You have like a murder, and then there was like all this like
a tornado.
Jesus Christ.
But I think that's what like, it was like really intriguing. So then Andy Cohen was like, well, what if we did this for real life?
Right.
So the show was supposed to be called Behind the Gates. It was Behind the Gates of Orange County, of the Housewives of Orange County, and he handpicked these, or helped pick these women. That one of them, Vicki Gundelson, used to be the longest running housewife, and she literally, I think last season was when she stepped back. Now she's back as a friend of. But she's had, I think like 15 years, if not more, of her life on reality TV.
Oh Jesus.
Is that crazy?
That's too much.
Yeah, I gotta wonder what that does to your psyche. Like, always having an eye on you.
I know.
And sometimes several, depending on how they set up your house, to always be watching. It's like, that's fucked up.
Truly.
Well, so it's really interesting because OC is a great... So I have like watched all of them except OC. I have never been an OC fan. I've tried. Don't come for me, housewife people. It just is a like...
We have a huge housewife fan base, so I can't defend you on that. Sorry.
No, I think OC is good. It just wasn't one that caught my eye, but I have found it interesting because you have Tamra Judge, who came on 3rd season, that then left, she got fired, and then she's back. But she was saying that she's like, she didn't know what to do without Housewives.
Right.
And I think for a lot of these women, and what you hear a lot of the stories that come from some of these women, is especially in the very beginning of the show, is that to them it was a way to do something for themselves.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Staying like true to the original premise. And a lot of, like Vicki was a working woman even before the show. But a lot of these women kind of said, like this was kind of what allowed them to kind of be their own person. Melissa Gorga from New Jersey is an excellent example of this. She loves her husband, loves her family, but like really her life revolved around being a mom.
Mm-hmm.
When Real Housewives of New Jersey, when she started on that show, she really got to expand and explore like other things. The show brought opportunities for her. She has her own boutique line. She dabbled in singing for a little bit. It's just like the fact that she gets to be a businesswoman. I mean, now she has her own podcast. She kind of talks about, and then you also watch the struggle of her family, because she came from a very traditional Italian New Jersey family where her husband's kind of like, well, I'm used to you being at home and making dinner and like this, and she's like, no, this is my life now. I'm doing things.
Yeah.
We are splitting tours. We are like, I'm not just going to stay at home.
Right.
And I think that is kind of why I think some of these women stay on the show. It's become a career for them. And it's become a way that like now I think when Real Housewives of Atlanta was in its prime, which was I think the most viewed franchise.
Oh, wow.
It would get like 5 million viewers.
Oh.
That's crazy.
Which is crazy. I mean, if you think about it, like Parks and Rec in its prime got half that amount of viewers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these women are like really able to put themselves out there. And then I think Andy Cohen especially does such a good job of making sure that these women take advantage of these opportunities that they are given and the spotlight they're given. Yeah. And they start these careers and side hustles and side businesses, and they use that as a platform on the show.
I think there's some, like, if I'm, watching the show as a woman, there's like empowerment there. You're starting to see things beyond the scope of the camera. Mm-hmm. There's inspiration there and things like that, especially people who might feel like they're stuck in, a family setting that isn't fully fulfilling to them. Yeah. You know what I mean? I think like to start off like that and then expand further, but also like to go from, OC to Atlanta to New York, like you have kind of variations of cities versus it just being like, well, New York and OC, like, of course, like they have money, you know what I mean? But then you just have like, I don't know, like I think there's also different demographics, which is helpful too.
I think absolutely. And I think that like, and some of these women, Salt Lake City, which is a newer franchise, is a great example. Yeah. Like they don't have the wealth, I don't think, that like Beverly Hills does. When Beverly Hills entered, Beverly Hills, like they're coming out in like full designer head to toe constantly.
Right.
Yeah.
And not that some of these other women don't wear designer, but it was kind of interesting to see these like different dynamics.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know. It's interesting because I also think that Housewives gets a bad, because I think what a lot of people see is the fighting, the cattiness. As a viewer that's watched it now for so many years, you see the women are smart. They're able to produce themselves and know what makes good TV. They know what's going to make a good season.
Yeah, especially after being like on the show for so many years, you just kind of get used to like finding your light per se.
Definitely. Which is, so it's kind of interesting because now as you're watching, like, when you watch the old shows, these women didn't know what they were doing.
Right. So now that they kind of know what they're doing, is this more, since you're watching it, I'm trying to frame this question. It's running through my brain. So is it more entertaining to watch now that these women know what they're doing, or was it more entertaining back when they were green, when they were fresh? Because to me, in my head, since they know like when to ham it up, does it feel not as relatable or not as like reality TV to its core?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think that it's just different.
Yeah.
You see the differences. I think that some of the funniest, TV ever is the first couple seasons of Real Housewives of Atlanta. Nene Leakes with her dynamic with Kim Zolciak. These women, I'm like in stitches. You have things that are still like used in like some of the things that Nene has said or Kim has said, it like still gets brought into like current vernacular.
Okay.
But I think that as they grew, when you added different housewives, because it wasn't always the same women, so you had these OGs that kind of could anchor the season and could kind of help, not self-produced, and I think also some franchises produce more than others. Like Real Houses of Potomac right now is having a real issue where they have two of the main women of the show that are Giselle and Robin are accused of really self-producing the show. Oh. And I think that sometimes that does get a little bit inauthentic. Sure. But then the storyline like last season kind of became about how they're self-producing the show.
Oh, so that became the drama in itself.
It became the drama of like, hey, like you're making up stuff. Like we've hung out for months. Now the cameras are back on and you're bringing up a situation that you said made you uncomfortable months ago. That now you're saying like, this is so bad. And like, I can't be around your husband. And like literally the other woman breaks the fourth wall and is like, what is this? What's going on?
That's pretty cool.
And so it's cool in that way because I also think that your viewership has gotten smarter. Yeah. So I think that it's cool that they're allowing the fourth wall to be broken a little bit more. But I do think that there is just some things that pop up that you just will never, whether they want to self-produce or not, they're not going to expect.
Yeah. You can never prepare for that.
You can never prepare. I mean, Real Housewives of Miami had a horrible divorce that was going on. And during the season, I mean, her husband was caught hot mic'd. Like, he didn't realize he had his mic on. And basically saying that, like, he doesn't want to be with her, that he's cheating on her. And that's kind of the stuff that whether you want to self-produce it or not, I mean, you're not making that up. Situation. And so I do think that is like what makes it so interesting is that there are these like silly moments where you're like, okay, this is like kind of for the TV. But then sometimes you're like, man, like this is just real life.
Do you feel like it was more stylized and formatted in the beginning or now?
I mean, in the beginning, it's like, it's so fun to watch the beginning seasons because there was definitely no formatting. Okay. I mean, like, I literally remember there was a confessional where they interview Bethany Frankel outside of a bar. It's like her confessional was like outside this bar. She's on roller skates. She roller skates away. And that's the kind of like, I mean,
mood. Great.
I just also like imagining her being upset and then just skate.
Glide. Yeah, I mean, now definitely things are maybe a little bit more formatted, but I don't think it loses.
A little more polished.
Yeah, sure. But I don't think it like loses anything. But I guess I'll say this. I think this is why it's really interesting how I started. I think it's interesting to be a Bravo fan right now, a Real Housewives fan. Mm-hmm. Because these are the kind of conversations that are happening amongst fans. And I think that Andy Cohen and probably the executive producers at Bravo are trying to figure out is that do we need to change it up? I think Real Housewives of New York, which I loved these women. I think that they were the second franchise. Okay. I mean, it just came to a point where it was tough to watch them. I think they had run their course and they scrapped everybody and started anew with this new Real Housewives of New York.
Okay.
And I think what's really interesting is that everything that I'm telling you before, I guess the producers have a better understanding of the show, but the women, they're all new to this. Yeah. So I think that they are coming in as fans, potentially, and kind of know like, oh, I know that this could be, but I think that you're seeing a lot of them, especially New York women, some of them were so busy. I mean, I think some of them were fans and some of them were just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just getting, and you're just watching them be a little bit more off the cuff. A little bit like, okay. I'm not realizing how this is going to come off on TV. Yeah. I'm just going to kind of say what I want to say. Yeah. I mean, you have Jenna Lyons, who was the...
you love Jenna Lyons.
Something about me is
you could have opened with that when we started this episode.
Something about me is I love Jenna Lyons.
Hi, I'm Sophia. I've been friends with these two for too long, and I love Jenna Lyons.
What a great tagline.
For people that don't know, Jenna Lyons was the creative director for J. Crew for 27 years. She is known as the woman that dressed America. I mean, when J. Crew really took off.
She didn't dress me.
I think she also did more women's clothes.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, she did dress you.
No.
She didn't dress me. That's what that sounds like. Amazing.
I just rubbed some dirt in my
Yeah.
face.
Yeah.
Call it a
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, so she's really funny because I mean, she really doesn't know what she's getting into.
Yeah.
And she just kind of like, it's funny to see her stirring the pot, but not really realizing it. It's the same way that like, it's a real group of friends. And it's the same way that you go to a group of friends and you're like, I mean, Nick did say that about you. But, you know, but it's like, and I'm not trying to like maybe gossip.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like, hey, I heard that Nick said this. I'm like, yeah, maybe he did. You know, it's like, I don't know how to lie in this situation. And it is, and I mean, then it becomes this kind of like dynamic.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder if like, if someone was to come in with a camera now and watch our dynamic, like, you know, before we started recording, whatever it might be, like, we might not realize, one, we might forget that the camera's there.
Right.
Which is kind of something that you want, I feel like, as a producer.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So then you're going through and trying to navigate like a difficult situation or just like a friend conversation.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's just like, oh.
Right.
Like in reality, usually no one knows about that or no one realizes that I made a little white lie. And now, you know, 5 million people do. And you're just like, oh.
Well, I mean, how often do we notice that the camera's recording us right now?
Very true. We never pan to the camera.
Well,
I mean, like,
camera? Yeah. Aside from like just checking that it's still recording,
right?
And like our angles are fine. Like,
right.
If I wasn't paying attention to like the production of this podcast, like I wouldn't give like 2 shits about the camera. And the only reason why I know I'm being recorded is because I have headphones and a microphone shoved in my face.
Right.
Like,
well, and like even watching episodes back. Like for us, I feel like there are so many times where I just watch. I'm like, I lean to grab some water. You're leaning to check the mics. You know what I mean? I'm just like, we just kind of forget that, oh, someone's recording us. So now imagine we're just like having a conversation and like having a few drinks. I'm gonna forget that there's, you know what I mean, someone there watching. Like, of course.
Totally. Yep.
So to go really quick back, what was so difficult about watching Real Housewives of New York before the new cast? Did it just get old, or did it just get mean, or
they were asking for too much money?
Yeah.
No, Real Housewives of New York is a tough spot for me. So
so sorry.
Sorry, we're unpacking some trauma,
emotional trauma.
Yeah, exactly, and the wine.
So what happened with Real Housewives of New York? Season 9, when Dorinda Medley joined the cast, was to me some of just the best Housewives television of all time.
What year do you know approximately? If you know,
that would have been, I want to say like 2000s.
So I'm just trying to get this in the timeline of reality TV, where it's at, and then also just the Housewives production timeline.
OC started what year?
2006 was when Real Housewives of OC starts.
Okay.
2007 you have New York.
Oh.
2008 you add Atlanta and New Jersey. So these are like the prime, like these are the to me like the OG franchises.
Yeah, back to back to back.
I mean, it also makes sense that they dove further into reality TV because at the time you had the writer's strike. So many shows were canceling so quickly, and reality TV was like, well, we don't need a script.
Right.
We just need to film people.
Yeah, that was like the only fact I knew about reality TV was that there was a huge boom a huge uptick in reality TV shows because of the writer's strike in the early aughts.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and I think what's really
early
interesting.
aughts.
The early aughts.
I mean, like, I've heard it before, but I'm just like, it always just sounds weird.
I'm sorry, you've said so many pretentious things on this show. I can say
All
the
right.
early aughts.
Nick saying something pretentious.
All right, assholes. Next.
And then Beverly Hills was 2010. But what's really interesting, so I guess it's those 5. There was DC in the middle of that, but DC got canceled after 1 season because actually one of the housewives crashed one of the Obama's state dinners and wasn't invited.
Oh,
what?
Because she thought that would be good TV.
How do you do
was.
that? Did they air it?
I've never watched DC because it's only 1 season.
Uh-huh.
Maybe it's 2, but Yeah, it wasn't great. Andy
That's
was not
insane.
pleased.
You know when you have the audacity to crash the president's state dinner because you're on reality television?
Yeah.
Jesus.
That's awesome.
Didn't go over.
I wonder why.
But it's interesting because like those 5 really, and I think in every franchise since then has something really different.
Right.
So you have OC, which is that original, like, behind the gates, like, Orange County lifestyle. Then you have New York. I mean, these were working women. I mean, these were downtown women. These were, like, entrepreneurs. They were they're living, you're also, like, moving from, you know, like, lavish houses to, like, awesome apartments.
Right.
But a totally different lifestyle. I mean, they're out and about at night. They're more in the scene. You have the Hamptons element to it.
Oh, yeah.
I think season 1 actually even starts in the Hamptons, or like they go to the Hamptons pretty quickly in the summer. I mean, that's a great season, or that's a great franchise. Real Housewives of Atlanta is just so funny. Their cast is just, I think, the best. Atlanta to me is just like the crown jewel, or it used to be. This season's a little tough, but we're gonna get back. But they just were just so, I don't know like how to describe the Atlanta women, because I think that it didn't have the same maybe wealth as OC, but they felt more real. And I think that that city is just, it just lends to people feeling, yeah, they're still rich. And I'm still, like, not 100% on their lifestyle, but I, like, have a better...
Well, I think to me, Atlanta is kind of in the same class of city as, like, Chicago, Philadelphia, where it's, like, more of the working class city.
Yeah.
Where you get more of the people that are doing it every day, getting their head down, shoulders are, you know, going for it.
For sure.
And so, like, New York and the OC and all those, like, more higher, quote unquote, higher class, pompous cities.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I see Atlanta being. So I think that's how it's more relatable for us folk.
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like Atlanta culturally was such a shift in the franchise so far, right? You have a predominantly black cast, and so I'm just like, you shift the tone and the culture and the way people are interacting with each other and the way that this is all going down versus I feel like an OC in New York can be very like brash and in your face, and OC can be a little bit more like hush hush behind things. Like now you have this very different juxtaposition within the same frame of the Housewives.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that these women, there was more, I think, even diversity amongst what these women did on a day-to-day basis. So you had Nene Leakes, who was like a true housewife. You had Kim Zolciak, who like was basically this like almost like they didn't have the term sugar baby at the time. Kind of was. You had her calling her guy Big Papa, who we never got to see on camera, but would see her on the phone saying, "Thanks, Big Papa," for when she would like buy these. I mean,
all of her wigs.
Yeah, all of her wigs. Then you had Sheree Whitfield, who was now ex-wife of a football player, which don't ask me which one. I mean, but she was
don't
like,
ask us either.
but then also it's like later Phaedra Parks joined the show. She was an attorney. I mean, she was like a true business woman.
Okay.
So I just think that it was more attainable in a sense, because it was like there was more people that you could there's these crazy characters like I'm not gonna see myself in Kim Zolciak,
right?
I hope. And then Candy Burrish joined the show, who like she was in the group Escape, and then she also wrote No Scrubs.
Okay.
I mean, she's a Grammy winning songwriter. And like watching her, I mean, it was just a really cool cast. Like you got a little bit of everything.
You had a new variety in dynamics
for sure. And I think it was just fun. Like I think that also what I love about Atlanta, which I think that some of the other franchises aren't as good at, is that Atlanta could get into like arguments and then they just let it go. And so it was like you're getting kind of new arguments and things over like every episode in a way. Like, there's maybe some overarching, but it's like these women could be so petty to each other, but then like still go to lunch and be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're gonna hash it out, but versus like New York, for instance, I mean, one argument could last the whole entire season.
Yeah, I think that brings back to like how Atlanta is just a completely different class of city.
Yeah.
Just the people are different too.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was awesome. And then Beverly Hills, I mean, that's really when you get this like lavish.
Right.
lifestyle.
Super rich.
Super rich. I mean, you had Camille Grammer, who was Kelsey Grammer's ex-wife. And I mean, we also talk about you're watching Kelsey, who has been beloved on our TV screen, openly cheat in front of, like, I mean, I will remember the moment where Camille goes on to, like, she's on camera and she's trying to, or like, I think she talks about in her confessional.
Yeah.
She goes to their apartment building in New York and she says, you know, hey, I'm Mrs. Grammer. Could you please let me up? And he goes, you're not Mrs. Grammer. Mrs. Grammer's already upstairs. And she had to show her ID.
Oh.
And I mean, so now we're also watching
Wow.
this like person that we know, right?
Yeah.
Like we've grown up with Kelsey. Cheat on his wife Camille.
Yeah.
Who, by the way, was the villain of the season.
Ooh.
Until then, that made her like really personal. I think it made people kind of empathize with her a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you feel for it.
You feel for her because no matter like who you are, you don't want to watch somebody get cheated on like that.
Right.
And I mean, like, and I remember like watching her, like they're in the limo going to the red carpet and she's like, I'll go with you to this. But I mean, they were like in the midst of a breakup.
Yeah.
That's great. So Kelsey was on the show?
He did make some appearances on the show.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, he grew up, or not grew up, but like a large majority of his career was in front of the camera. And even he really wasn't cognizant of the cameras catching parts of his life.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
that's fair.
I don't know. But yeah, I mean, that was a great season or great series. But so the problem with New York, and I think is kind of what we were talking about, is that I think it was a mix of things. First, you had Dorinda. When Dorinda joined the show, she was so funny. She was so great. But then I think it kind of highlighted that these women are starting to drink a little bit too much.
Oh.
Getting a little too drunk.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you have people like Dorinda. You have Sonia Morgan, who, by the way, her ex-husband was a J.P. Morgan
descendant.
Descendant.
Oh, wow.
Which she gets very pissed one day at a dinner because somebody talks about Wells Fargo and she goes, "Fuck Wells Fargo."
Amazing.
So yeah, I think that the ladies are getting a little too drunk. I think that there was a lot of questions of why are we only seeing a select part of New York? New York's one of the most diverse cities in the country.
Right, it's huge.
Yeah.
And yet we're only seeing rich white ladies, to be honest.
Yeah.
This was kind of a different New York than what we were used to. So I think then they tried to bring in a new cast member, Ebony Williams, who was amazing. I think that she gets a really bad rep. She had a really bad season. She did try to bring some I mean, she tried to teach the women, I think, of just
Diversity.
Yeah.
And also, Ebony, she is a very educated woman. I think I'm smarter than anybody that's been on this show. It was also during the Trump presidency. So there was already a lot of controversy going on there. Don't know if you guys remember that. So I think that there was already this like big question on race. People were getting really upset about it for some reason. And I think that they felt like Ebony was, and I say for some reason because I'm like, I don't know why people just couldn't realize that there's other races in this country, but that's fine.
It's fair. Yeah.
But I think that they felt like Ebony was like teaching them, and where she just was just trying to like show them, like she used to do a Harlem's night where, you know, then it's like at each like place on the table it was a different black person of prominence that like then the women could, and like some women were like very, you know, and there was just one that just was not about it and just kind of made it like a, you know, she got a little Trumpy.
Who was that?
Ramona.
There it is.
Oh gosh. Yeah. So I think that is really what kind of nixed the franchise. And I feel bad for them. They were COVID season 2. COVID in New York was not a great time to film.
Sure.
No.
Yeah.
But I think that there was like kind of a lot of like, what is the future of reality TV during COVID? We didn't know how long this was going to last.
Yeah.
And so I think that they greenlit a couple of franchises. And I mean, New York was one that was so prominent, but I think that just killed them.
Well, I think too, like especially with this show, that these women are going out and doing things so often.
Yes.
Where like a show like Big Brother, or the only really reality TV show that I watch ever is Top Chef.
Yes.
On Bravo.
Hey.
It's a great show.
It's a lot easier to do that because you can quarantine for your 2-3 weeks prior to filming, and then you're in that bubble. You're there. You're done.
Right.
You're not going anywhere else.
Right. Well, I think like Atlanta tried to do that, but like you didn't realize how much you needed them to go do their own lives and not constantly be on like girls trips.
Yeah.
It was like, I don't want to watch Sheree Whitfield like eat chips on her sofa. Like I can watch that at home.
Right.
I'll just
Put a mirror in front of me right now.
Yeah. So you were losing this like lavish lifestyle part of it.
Sure.
Because everybody was in lockdown, understandably.
Right.
Yeah, so I think that was what killed that cast a little bit.
Sure.
I think it was the racism. I think.
Don't you hate it when racism kills your show?
God.
It's
always getting in the way.
Always getting in the way. Yeah, I think it was, and I think people were really like, "What are we watching?" And so that's why I'm really excited about this new cast.
Yeah.
And I think that you're also watching like, a podcast the other day that I was listening to. And I forgot who it is.
You listen to someone else but ours? How
Shocking.
dare you?
Shocking.
We're not on repeat? Ridiculous.
But it's like they are not like a forced diversity. Like these women are just friends that actually happen to be of like different ethnicities and different backgrounds.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like, oh, like we're trying to get like this token person and
I was
this
about to
token.
say,
Oh,
you have
sure,
the token people.
Yeah, like this, which I think that like unfortunately kind of put Ebony in this position when they put her in the other season.
100%, yeah.
Because it's like she wasn't friends with these women, and then they basically were just like, hey, Ebony, you're black. Join the cast.
Yeah. Here's a forced friendship with a bunch of rich white women that one's definitely racist, the others might be.
Yeah. So I think that like now you're getting really good conversations without it being forced.
Oh, that's cool.
Sure. Yeah.
Because these are just this women. These are these women's lives.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the same way that like the way that we talk about like our lives and like our backgrounds. Like I'm not bringing something up because I'm like, let me teach you about being Haitian.
Right.
You know, it's just like,
well, you're my token Haitian.
Everybody needs one.
Yeah.
Everybody
My bingo
needs
card,
one.
Sophia.
But like, no, it is really cool. So I think it's really interesting. And then you have like Salt Lake City is being brought in. They're talking a lot about Mormonism.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
There's like a religious aspect to it that's really interesting.
Yeah.
They're about to start their 4th season. Real Housewives Miami got picked back up. They were on a hiatus for a while, but now you have this like really great like it's like even beyond, because actually Gertie, who's on it, is Haitian. You have a lot Cuban, Hispanic, Miami, you know, culture.
Sure.
There is a lot more going on. It's not just Potomac and Atlanta like holding down the forts with you know, it's like you're seeing a lot more.
Yeah.
And it like kind of makes, I mean, Miami was really well received. And so I'm kind of wondering, like, you're seeing these old, then people are kind of wondering, well, are some of these other franchises going to get rebooted? Because, I mean, it's working really well for New York.
Definitely.
So do you think do you feel like it feels like a strategic, like DEI sort of strategy?
Yeah.
Does it feel fake and curated, or does it feel like natural to the franchise?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the franchise. So
Okay.
I will say that I think COVID really did change things. I think that the George Floyd murder really changed things. I mean, that was like a huge, in the country, people were asking for.
100%.
Yeah.
You know, absolutely. And I think that Bravo is just trying to figure out, like any business, how they're going to do it. I think that you had some franchises that were receptive to it. You had Real Housewives of Beverly Hills that added Crystal Minkoff, who is Chinese. She was the first Chinese housewife. Her husband produced a little movie. I don't know if you heard of it. It's called The Lion King.
Never. What is that?
And then you had
cool.
Garcelle, who she's Haitian, Black Haitian. She was in. You guys, I think, would recognize her if you saw her. She was in Coming to America. She was also like a model for a while. Like she did her own thing, and I think that those women were like very receptive to them. It didn't feel like a forced, "Hey, I'm adding."
Right.
Crystal and Garcelle brought culture. Because that's who they are.
Sure.
I mean, Crystal threw a Chinese New Year's party because she throws one every year. You know, Garcelle hosted the women and had them over for Haitian food because that's like what she eats, and she wanted to share that. And I think that the women on that show were more receptive to it.
Okay.
Kyle and Garcelle had an awesome conversation about race on the show where Kyle basically accused Garcelle of not paying for Kyle's charity. Garcelle had made a bid, and Kyle was like, well, I never received a check. And Garcelle was like, look, I know that you're just like trying to like kind of get a dig at me, but like you can't say that a Black woman didn't pay you. It's like a very different, she's like, how it's coming off to me, it's not reading.
Your accusation is different because it's me versus anyone else.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Kyle was like, I never thought about it that way. And it was a great conversation. I think that it kind of just depends on, you know, who, but New York, unfortunately, it didn't work.
Yeah.
And so you needed this new cast.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, having this younger cast, having people that want to have these conversations, because it is like, you know, at the end of the day, I mean, it's like silly and fun, and there's all, you know, there's like drama and there's this and that, but I also think people just want to see themselves a little bit, and they also don't want to sweep these kind of issues under the rug. That's life.
I think too, especially in today's climate, that people might be a little sick of the rich. There's a lot of like, eat the rich. I'm one of those people saying that every single goddamn day, of this eat the rich mentality where it's like, I don't give a fuck about these people and their money.
Yeah.
I want to relate to another human
Sure.
at the same, maybe a little bit above level than I am right now.
Sure.
Which is why I'm petitioning right now, starting at this very second. I'm going to call Andy up and be like, hey, how about Real Housewives of Coal City, Illinois?
Coal City, yes.
A dead cold town that is just struggling to get by. What a great story.
It's actually the Real House Husbands of Coal City. Just drinking a lot of beer.
Yeah, they're
a lot of lazy boys.
Dads and their grandfathers all work the coal mine, but they can't anymore because it's shut down. And they're just struggling with that reality.
No.
That's going to be perfect.
It's a great story.
Millions of viewers. But what I think is interesting, I think when Real Housewives started, I think for a lot of viewers, it kind of, and especially during like, you know, that comes about at the recession, right? Yeah. So reality TV, while yes, you can connect in like these people's lives are kind of similar to mine, there is an escapism there because you can say, oh, ha ha ha, like silly rich white lady, like that's just a ridiculous, you know, dramatic thing that happened that would never happen in my life because I have to work. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you have multiple seasons of that, and you have multiple like, you know, OC, New Jersey, New York, all these things, right? But now that shifts, and we start to see culturally not like I need escapism in the sense of like I want to see more so myself represented, whether it's reality TV or not, more so than I need escapism from the hardship of my everyday life. And I think there is still that. And I think that's where like movies come in, and that's where like television comes in, all of that. But like now we're saying across the board, I want representation and I want to be able to see myself in some facet. And I can think like classism can still exist in like that escapism, you know, pathway. Yeah. But there's still that kind of aspect of well, I'm tired of watching rich white women on TV.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
let's shake that up because of the state of, you know, the world today.
Yeah, and honestly, and I think that there was also this call of like, why is it that to see diversity you have to go to Atlanta and Potomac? You know, it's like why are we almost like, why is it just one franchise? Like, why can't I just see it across the board?
Right, because there's so many different districts in New York that have such a diverse, like, why is it just the white people in New York?
Well, and I think that also the women of Atlanta and Potomac were already having like a lot of these conversations within their shows just naturally. I mean, Kim Zolciak, who I was talking about in Atlanta, I mean, she was a white woman, and they have always had conversations with, well, Kim, like how you say something, like, you know, that's not right, or I can't get away with that. And I mean, these were just conversations back in, when did I say start? 2008?
Yeah.
Because that's just like, of course that's going to be talked about. That's
right.
always been an issue. Potomac has had a lot of talks about colorism on their show because that's something that these women live with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So I think that people were like, why do I have to just see these franchises? And I'm excited to see it other ways, and I'm excited to like see these conversations. And I think I don't know, it's cool just getting just other women on our screen.
Well,
100%.
And I think it brings that conversation in a it can bring the conversation in a very lighter tone. So I think a lot of people aren't necessarily receptive to educational conversations, you know, surrounding race or surrounding kind of inequality.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they watch something where it's like, I'm going to talk about this, you know, some people start to tune out and they're like, oh, again, like all of this, da da da. But then in a housewife setting, that can be, you know, kind of ridiculous sometimes and kind of silly and fun. And so now we're going to have like the drama of flipping a table next to the conversation about race, next to, you know, she got too drunk and fell in a pool. You know what I mean? Like you kind of sandwich it in a really nice way that people start to kind of absorb in not an intentional focus, you know? And I think that's kind of helpful to start to change the dial and change the tone of, you know, culture today.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is like how life works. You know, it's like, I don't know if you've ever lived, but I think that sometimes these conversations, people go, oh, this is so heavy. Why do you have to talk about this? And it's like, I can still like kiki, have fun, but also like this still exists. And can kind of talk about that too and switch back and forth. I mean, that's what you do with good friendships. Like you talk about the serious stuff and you talk about the silly stuff, and maybe sometimes you'll have arguments. And I think it's cool to now see that a little bit more. And it's fun watching these women navigate that, because these are also like, I think that something that I have noticed in watching the show, like not every woman is like the most intelligent woman in the world, but a lot of them, I think, and I think all, like at the end of the day, I think all of them are women that, you know, they have families. They, whether you agree with them sometimes or not, they have like the ability to have these good conversations. I mean, there are some very smart women on this show. I think that they get stereotyped that all these women are dumb and they all just want to start fights. I mean, there are some women that are just dumb, like.
Well, and I also think during those conversations, the stumble through of a difficult conversation is just so real and so natural.
Absolutely.
You know, it's not curated of, I'm going to say this and you're going to respond like this. And like, this is how this conversation should go.
Right. Like a corporate training video.
Correct. Correct. Like there can be frustrations. There can be the stumble. There can't be, well, that's not what I meant. And like all of these things, because that's honest, you know? And so while some of them might not be like the curated, like I'm an educated, intelligent person who can speak very like highly, I think that kind of brutalism of a conversation is kind of good. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And by the way, sometimes like New Jersey is a great example. It is fun to watch some of these women that are really like Margaret on that show right now, I think is brilliant. And then you have Teresa Giudice that maybe isn't always thinking. And it is interesting to watch like the frustration that happens like between the two of them. But I mean like that, like, that's life.
Yeah.
You know what? So,
totally.
And it's fun watching like, oh, well, New Jersey's getting it's a little tough to be a New Jersey fan. Because it is like the same fight every season. I mean, that I always joke with Jaime likes New Jersey, and I'm like, yeah, because it's a family show. That one, the whole family's involved. The husbands are in on it too.
Yeah.
I mean, but it is like it's a true like Italian family, and I mean, you know, it's just like, they're not all Italian, but it's like that same like, you know, familial aspect of it, and it does just get a little tough sometimes with those fights.
Totally. So have we seen an uptick in viewership within the Real Housewives franchise?
So that's, I think, what's really interesting is that when Atlanta, when I talked about, was at its prime, right? Like 5 million viewers. We're not seeing that right now. I think I would say for some of it, like we're getting about 1 million.
Okay.
However, I think that there are more franchises than before. So I think people are maybe splitting up their time. Not everybody's me and watching like 6 out of 7.
Right.
So does that hurt the franchise, do you think? Or do you think that's just the nature of having so many?
I think that's just the nature of having so many, in
Yeah.
my opinion. And having to split it between all the streaming services and all the saturation of the market right now.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, and I think that they're getting it's interesting because I think that they're getting better at like how they team up certain franchises.
Sure.
So like New York and Atlanta, which are 2 of the longer running ones, two of the longest running, now air at the same time.
Oh.
Potomac was a newer franchise, and so was Salt Lake City, and they did it with Beverly Hills. Beverly Hills had such a good, you know, like backing and viewership, and so you're putting newer franchises. Now Potomac, I would say, has like been there a lot longer and can kind of hold its own a little bit more. So I do think that they think about it like that.
Okay.
But I mean, look, like Bravo now has BravoCon, which is this will be their 2nd year. So I mean, it's becoming like
Jesus.
Comic-Con. it's it's crazy.
That's bananas.
Crazy doesn't even sum it up at all.
But it is like the interest that it got.
No, definitely 100%. I mean, these social phenomena are wild that they stem from just one instance in a show that is about these people that you're never going to meet in real life.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna say thank you for teaching me all of these names that I will never remember. But the hype and the wave of interest that is spread across the country about these housewives.
Yeah.
Wow.
From the most vested of us all here. Yeah. I think it will be interesting. I think one, like to Devin's point, like thank you for taking us through like the beginnings of this, right? And I think it'll be interesting to see now that they're changing strategy. I don't really know how to say it other than that because I think it is a strategy, right? It's it's kind of a rebrand to your point, like New York's going through that, and I think you'll see that kind of follow with other franchises. It'll be interesting to see how long it runs for, right? Because now with this, you have a kind of, again, like a rebranding of the show, but then are they going to be able to keep on evolving, you know, reality TV to be able to do this? Like with Survivor or these kind of other like game challenge shows, it's a whole cast of different people. You have different challenges. It's very different, you know what I mean? But this is continuous storyline of people's lives. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like,
and if Housewives will be leading the style of reality TV, or will they be continuing to chase how reality TV is evolving?
Totally.
Yeah. Agreed.
You'll have to let us know.
Yeah.
We'll come back to you.
And with the writer's strike, do we see more of it?
That's what I'm
a repetition
to see
of 2008. Yeah.
I know. I am wondering because it is lasting a lot longer. But I also think that this writer's strike's a little bit different because you now have also the actor's strike. And there is there's kind of rumblings of some of these reality TV stars striking as well. In the sense that, I mean, a lot of the strike is about streaming rights. And no matter what the show is, reality or scripted, it's getting streamed.
Yeah.
So.
And you still need to get paid fairly.
Absolutely.
Regardless.
Yeah. So it's interesting. We'll see what happens.
We'll have you back in a year to discuss the fallout and the
Now that we have a nice base layer, we can check in yearly
Keep going.
to see how the Housewives are doing.
See how it's going. I know. I was like, if I have one shot on this podcast.
All right. Last and final question is favorite housewife.
Oh, of all time.
Of all time.
Oh my god, this is hard. I mean,
One. You can only pick one.
probably is Dorinda. She's
Dorinda.
so
Okay.
funny.
You heard it here first, folks. Dorinda.
Dorinda.
For
I
the
would
win.
love to meet her, and if she's ever looking for a guest in her Berkshire's house, I will stay in the fish room. No, you two don't know what
Us
that
too,
means.
right? Always the fish room.
100%.
Whenever I walk
love
into the
fish.
house, I ask, "Where's your fish room?" And they're like, "Right this way, sir."
I'm gonna change the studio to a fish room.
If
Just
you
put,
don't,
like goldfish all over these paintings and stuff.
this is done. The next time I walk in here, this isn't a fish room. Perfect.
I'll work on it.
Okay. All right. Well, Soph, thanks for being our first guest on the podcast. Thanks for coming out. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
guys.
Yeah.
I know you're busy with being our staff lawyer.
Yeah.
So taking your time out of your busy schedule
Yeah.
to actually record instead of just litigate for us all the time.
I know you guys gotta chill on the case.
All right, everyone. Well, you can find us on all the
Ooh,
things.
let's have Sophia read that.
Oh, okay. You want to
Special guest
read?
perk.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Can
Tell people, Sophia, where can people find us on the internet?
What does this stand for?
YouTube.
That's TikTok, Instagram, YouTube.
It looks like 4T.
Well,
Well,
I
maybe
don't make
one
fun
day.
of your handwriting.
You can find
off.
them on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, or 4T at What Do You Know _podcast, or at Twitter at WDYK _podcast.
So you knew that was a Y, but not a 4 there, huh?
That was context clue.
Fair.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Devin, I'll talk to you next week. And thanks again, Soph.
Thanks.
All right.
I'll
Thanks,
talk to you guys
Sophia.
probably next year.
All right.
Perfect.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.